Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of What Did Adam Say? Season 4, episode 32. I keep saying I'm going to get rid of the seasons. It's coming. It's definitely coming. I just have to actually have the time to sit and count how many podcasts I've done. I'm done with the seasons, I think. I just want to keep it going. Like I said, I think I'm on a episode close to 100. So it's getting to that point. But besides the point, I have a very special guest with me tonight. It's somebody that I met through the cannabis community locally. I think I actually met him through my homeboy Lou Vega, who's been a real like brother to me in this cannabis and hemp community, and we always try to be there for each other. He's the co-host of the Cannabis Corner Radio. I've been on his show 2 or 3 times at this point now. We've started to get to know each other, but only on radio format, really, a little bit through Messenger. So this is going to be a fun conversation tonight for sure. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the share button, and let's.
Wait, what am I doing? Created a movement, won't ruin what you are pursuing, but I wake up every morning never yawning, cause I wake up with the intent to make today my bitch, and I don't need to hear you talking, so just shut your lips, cause I'ma make it, yeah, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, Lord have mercy, I'ma make it, I wake up with the intent to make today my bitch, and I don't need to hear you talking, so just shut your lips, I'ma make it, yeah, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, Lord have mercy, I'ma make it, this shit is crazy, right, this shit is crazy,
This shit is crazy, right? I was just thinking. I don't know if have we met in person.
I think we met at a convention probably up in
Yeah,
Massachusetts before. But
yeah,
most of our conversations have been done virtually.
yeah. It's like a gift and a curse for sure. Having all the virtual stuff. It's like you get the gift of having somebody readily available, but it's kind of a curse in the sense too of like sometimes I just don't feel like answering my phone. Like
Right.
it's like sometimes I just want to be like a regular person before phones existed and not have to be expected to like answer to people immediately. Like that's the curse side. The gift side is, I don't live with my son doesn't live with me. I can connect with him whenever I want. I could talk to any family member anywhere, any friend. That's fucking amazing. So it's cool to get
Yeah, I
connected
mean, you
like
could and
that.
do a video call. You talk about living without the phone, and I did grow up without the cell phones and without all that up until like a later age. This they didn't come till I was in like my 30s. I didn't
Oh
see
damn.
cell phones till I was in my 30s till the 90s, right? So that was the beauty. When you left your house, you didn't have to answer to anybody. You're driving in your car, and you're just driving in your car with your friends or by yourself or whatever, and nobody could reach you. And there was a real more a sense of freedom in that, especially as a kid. Your parents can't find you. you know they don't know where you're going. Now they can track you, right? They can put a little tracker on your phone. They know exactly where you're going.
Yep.
So it's definitely changed the way we live. And I know for personally, I really had to adapt to it. And I to this day look at this thing more as a chain or a curse than it is a blessing. But I do realize how much easier and more convenient it makes our lives. And the other side of that. It does make our lives easier and convenient. It also makes it easier and more convenient for people to give you, to get into your head, to get advertising, to track where you're going, to know
Yeah.
exactly what you're doing. They can even access your phone, your camera,
Yep. That
and
we
it's
give them
changed the
permission.
world. Yeah, whether you do or you don't. It's changed a lot of ways. Like, I even look at now that everybody has a cell phone, everything can be documented because they have a camera. Nobody carried around a camera back in the day except photographers.
Hmm.
you know So this stuff didn't all get documented and threw up on the internet right away. You didn't know a lot of what was happening. You know, and in a lot of ways, ignorance was bliss. You know, I hate to say it, because now, I mean, you could find out anything happening anywhere at any time if you go on any one of these social media platforms and look in the right places, pretty much.
And if you're you know, dedicated enough, you can dig back and find stuff you're not supposed to find a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you on that. And I also have noticed that a lot of the stuff that you used to be able to access has scrubbed from the internet.
Yep.
There are a lot of videos on YouTube that really told a lot of truth. Scrubbed now. They're gone. They're gone, and you can't find them. So, you know, again, there's the curse and the blessing. The internet is a totally different place than when it started. You know, if you look at YouTube, I know what I used to be able to find on YouTube, you know, back in the day when it first started. And I know what I used to be able to post on Facebook and Twitter back in the day, which now would be considered, you know, misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, whatever they want to label it. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, when this all began, it was a free and open platform. You could find out anything and you could say anything that you wanted, pretty much. You know, unless you were threatening to kill somebody, you know, and then big money came in, then advertisers came in. And then all of a sudden the advertisers, oh, I don't like what's in this video, you know, and big corporations, you know, the companies became public. So then now corporations can buy big stocks and have a say in what these social platforms put on. And it's a totally different place now than it was 20 years ago. You know, and I don't know about you, but I have been flagged and had a lot of my stuff taken down that I posted 10 years ago. That was perfectly fine. That was up for 10 years. That was perfectly fine 10 years ago. Nobody said anything until 2022 or 20, you know, it started in 2020 with the sickness.
Yep.
And, you know, and also with Donald Trump, too, during his presidency. This is when it really started and get hot and heavy. You know, they used to ban people for doing the crazy stuff like, you know, showing violent crimes on Facebook and things like that, which, of course, that should be banned. But, you know, I would say during the Trump era is when it kind of really started this heavy censorship thing, and it didn't come necessarily from Trump, his administration. It came from the social media platforms themselves, and I think it came from probably more left-leaning sources. But that's really when it started. How do you ban a sitting president of the United States?
That was wild to see, like so wild to see, especially like I've learned throughout the years to not trust what the news says, right? It's
right.
I feel like most of my friends that have common sense don't trust the news, because what's happening is they're creating a narrative based on the advertisers that are paying them money. Follow the money. Every time you follow the money, there's a bunch of bullshit. So instead of watching the news when some kind of big event like January 6th goes on, I look on they were doing a great job censoring it, but you can still find some. I look on Facebook, I look on YouTube, I look on Instagram, a few other social media places, looking for the live videos of the people that are actually there, so I can piece together what's actually happening without any kind of twist from the media in my brain. I don't need indoctrination. I don't want it, don't need it. Every time I feel it coming, I'm like, ugh, this is a disease in itself. But you know, on January 6th, I watched all the live videos, and there was a lot of sketchy shit going on. A lot of sketchy shit going on. And there's already been proven patsies in the crowd that were paid from the media to go in there and stir up shit. And I saw videos, I saw live videos, hand to God, on my kids' lives, literally, of police opening the gates, letting people in, saying, come on, come on. Like, there's just a crazy amount of shit that the news doesn't talk about. And they try to flip this narrative like it's equivalent to a terrorist attack.
Right.
And it's simply just not that. It, like, come on, let's be honest. The Capitol wasn't really, and like, people were just putzing around the Capitol like tourists, you know.
Yeah, and you don't also want to minimize it. It is something that did happen.
It is.
It is something that is unprecedented. I mean, even during the 60s, nobody even tried to get into the White House. And even BLM. And I got to say, I happen to believe that a lot of those, I don't want to call them riots, let's say protests, were ultra violent. We're talking about tons of businesses being destroyed, people losing their lives,
Well,
and
here's the thing
fires
about
being set, and they were covered totally differently.
here's the thing about those riots. There was something weird, right? I went to the BLM riots in Boston. I marched with people. I'm very much like, I grew up in the hip hop community. Most of my friends were black. Like, I completely understand where they're coming from. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I have seen this a billion times on the news. I'm gonna go march with people, and I'm gonna go see what's going on
Yeah, I did the
myself.
same.
So I went there, and I was right at the front. Like, we marched to the Capitol. I mean, yeah, the Capitol building in Boston, State House or whatever. Right to the steps where we've done like a lot of protesting for cannabis and hemp. Um, and I was watching, and then all of a sudden, like, an official BLM group came in hours into us standing there and protesting peacefully. Like, we were shutting anything down that was violent. And I started to notice these dudes dressed like in all black going through the crowd, bumping into people while they're walking through. I'm just watching in the crowd because I'm like literally on the steps looking out. It was fucking crazy. There was so many people, and my sister was with me, so I was with some people. I was like, hey, I got to go find my sister. She's with another group. I got to be connected with her when I feel something's off. Like, I just feel something's off. And so I literally like swam through the crowd, like, sorry guys, excuse me, gotta find my sister. Sorry. And I get to my sister, and there's one of these dudes dressed in all black standing like 2 rows of people behind my sister, just staring at her. Like, he doesn't know I'm coming up to like come to my sister. He's just staring at her. And I literally came around, and I put my arm like around her waist and I grabbed her. I was like, you gotta stay close, okay? Hold my hand. We're not letting go. And I just like held her hand. Right after that, this like official BLM group came in. They It just like got weirdly violent after that. There started to be like water bottles thrown up at the State House steps and everything, and other things. And then shit just started popping off. And I was like, I turned to my sister. I was like, we gotta go. Like, we gotta
Yeah.
go. There's something's not good. Like, as soon as it went dark, like as soon as the sun went down, it turned not good. And we started turning around. Like, it was we stayed mostly to the end. They were like, all right guys, now stay safe, leaving, and da da da. And there was just like uproars. And I'm walking away, and I'm pulling my sister. Like, I'm like, all right, come on, we're leaving. And that same dude in all black tried to like get between her. He like My arm was stretched like all the way back because he's trying to pull, and I'm just squeezing her hand. I'm like, I'm not letting go. And then I just like lifted my hand over him and just like stared back at him, and he like looked back at me. And I kept seeing those people throughout the crowd. We started walking up the path going back towards our car, and people were running towards us screaming, and I'm like, hey, why? Like, I have video of this. I was like, why are you running? Why are you running? Like, we don't know. People were running, and I'm like, stop running. That's not a good thing. Don't run. Like, and so
Yeah,
and
they
people
don't
are
get
starting
it.
to panic all around. And I'm just recording us walking for no reason, Joe. Literally no reason, just for safety. And I see another one of these dudes dressed in all black drop golf ball. And I'm like, it took me a second. I'm like, I'm
Mm.
looking, and I just see the doop, 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 and I'm like, was that a fucking golf ball? And I didn't say anything. And then he dropped another one. And I said to my sister, I was like, he just dropped a golf ball. I was like, look, like down to the left, there was a golf ball. I kicked it out of like the path into the like out of where people walk. Because I think he knew like shit was gonna go down. People were gonna be running. They're gonna trip over golf balls and shit and fall, and
Oh
then shit gets really
wow.
bad. And it was weird, Joe. My GPS, it told me to go down this weird alley. I don't know why it would do that. Like when I could clearly just keep walking down the street to where my car was on a main road parked. Um, and I just again my gut, dude. I was like, I'm not going down that alley. I'm not going down. And this dude that's dropping golf balls turns down there. I ended up seeing that same section like on the news from a half hour, not even after we left. So it was like right when we left, you know, when they filmed it. And it's just shit popping off, cops hitting people and people going off with the cops, and the National Guard like came out immediately. They were
They're
staged.
ready. They were
They were yeah,
poised.
they were staged in the Boston Commons parking garage, all ready to go. They were coming up right as the thing was ending, and they came out tear gassing people. Because I was with
Yeah.
another one of my friends, and we departed because we kind of got out of the chaos real quick. We thought, and she was parked in the garage, so she literally walked into this giant group of fucking National Guard, and they just immediately start dropping tear gas. So she got tear gassed for
Oh
no
wow.
reason, literally no reason. The second she said, the second they came out of the garage, they saw people and just started throwing tear gas. And there's video to back that up. Like there's people that are parked in the garage watching them all stage and coming out of the garage and everything. And it was just super weird. There was just a lot of weird shit going on.
So
And
do you think that, let's say, when that official group came, that they were there to actually start trouble? That they actually started the violence, like they were there as disruptors?
it seemed very methodical. It seemed like because most of the dudes that were dressed in all black were like these mangy looking white dudes. Like they look like they haven't showered in weeks. And I think
Oh,
I
so
think
they
it's the group that are called like Boogalos or something like that. They go around to different protests and they start shit. The kid that dropped golf balls again, hand to God, on my kids' lives. There was protest in Providence the next night, and they were burning a cop car. And who was the one that lit the car on fire?
him.
I found somebody on live again. I searched for live videos, so I was watching somebody's live video, and I saw the car light on fire, and I saw him running away. And I'm like,
Yeah,
wait, who was that running? And I play it in slow motion, and I rewind it back. I'm like, it's that same
it's the
fucking
same
kid.
guy.
And this is
So
what they
that's what they
do.
do. They
They
go
rile
around,
up
they
the
cause
crowds.
trouble, and they get the what was normally, like you said, a peaceful protest turn violent.
It was
You know,
100% peaceful. There was even some dude like shouting in the front, and everybody just booed him until he went away. Like it was awesome. It was
well,
powerful.
I
Like
think
the
in
whole
general people want a peaceful protest.
yeah
I
yeah
do. I don't think they go out with the intention of causing violence and trouble, but then there's that group, mob mentality that happens, and if you get the right people in there
and mix
saying the
panic
right
in.
things, yeah, and they mix panic in, and then you get the mob mentality. Somebody who was intending on being peaceful, by the end of the day, will be there right there participating, or they'll do what you do and get up and leave. But some
Yeah.
people just don't, they can't get away in time. They get caught up in the crossfire. They didn't want to get, but they got hit by a bottle. Whatever, these things happen. And as we were saying earlier, it's amazing how none of that was classified as terrorist or, rioting. They wouldn't even say the word rioting, but let's be real. If you looked at any of the footage, that's what it was. That's what it was. I mean, I grew up in the 60s. There were riots in the 60s. Well, it looked the same damn way. It looked the same thing to me. But
Mhm.
now here it is in 2021. It's not rioting. It's peaceful protests, or mostly peaceful protests. And it's amazing how biased the media is, because then January 6th happens after a summer of rioting. And they're terrorists.
Yeah.
They're terrorists for what they did. And I'm not sticking up for them, because a lot of it was unnecessary. And,
I just think
Didn't
it's just
really need to
weird that
happen.
it's just weird that cops were letting people in and shit. Like I just
Well, that's what shows you that it was either the cops are sympathetic to their cause,
could
or it
be
was
that.
planned, or it was, it was orchestrated,
Yeah.
basically. And I'm not even saying the people are participating even suspected it was orchestrated. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, they're all like just patsies.
Right. Oh, he's letting us in. Oh, great.
This is great. We're gonna get right in. I thought this would be a battle. This is awesome. I was scared.
Yeah.
Wait, they're letting us in again? I'm gonna smash a window. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens. Oh, they
Yeah.
didn't like that. Fuck. And
Yeah. Exactly. So
then
I
they're just
think,
walking around like, how did we even get in here?
yeah. I mean, let's be real. Half the things the government does could be considered terrorist if you're going by that
Oh
definition.
my god, yeah. How many
You
kids
know.
have we drone striked?
Well, exactly right. How many kids have we drone striked in other countries?
It's
So
it's
it's backwards right now. That's the only way I can describe this world, is the upside down world. You know
the
what I
world just
mean?
needs more cannabis.
The world needs cannabis in many, many ways. That's why I directed my efforts a lot of from the more, reporting on the truth and all that, to really going towards something that I knew could actually change. A lot of the stuff we talked about, this big government stuff. It's stuff that's been embedded in our system for years and years and years, and it's very tough to change.
Hmm.
It's not something you can do legislatively. Let's put it that way, because we've proven, you can put all the laws in that you want, but unless they're interpreted properly and unless they're enforced properly, they don't mean crap. You
Yep.
know what I mean? They really just don't mean shit. So, we had the Civil Rights Bill and all that stuff that they put in the 70s to make sure we had equal rights. Well, here we are in 2021 and we're still fighting over the same thing. Racism is still an issue now. I mean, come on. So I directed my efforts into hemp and cannabis because I do believe, as Jack Harris said, that hemp can save the planet. Between the two plants, you have medicine, you have industrial uses, you have building, you have fuel, you have paper goods, you have clothing. All these things can be made from hemp and cannabis. Besides the obvious recreational uses of it,
Hmm. The
which
medicinal
most
use.
people which is actually medicinal use, because if you're taking a medicine, whether you intend to use it medicinally or not, your intention may be to smoke a joint and go play some video games. You're still getting all those cannabinoids and all the medicine in your system. It doesn't matter whether you're a medical patient or you're a recreational user. It's the same stuff. So, it doesn't matter. You bought your brownie at a dispensary, or you bought your brownie, or you made it yourself. Either way, you're ingesting cannabinoids. And like I'm saying, whether you're doing it because, you have some medical issue, or whether you're doing it just to go relax and have fun, either way, it doesn't matter. The results are still the same. You're still ingesting medicine and doing
Yep.
something good for your body.
Yeah, I've had a few friends that are like, "Oh, I stopped smoking, and I've been having really bad anxiety lately. I don't know why." I'm like, "Dude,
You stop
it's because
smoking.
you stopped smoking. Like, you don't have to completely raw dog it. Like, okay, for me, probably 8 months to a year ago, I was smoking way too many dabs. Just like waking up in the morning, doing 2 to 3 dabs, and then getting home from work, doing like 2 to 3 dabs, and then after when my daughter goes to bed, doing 2 to 3. Right before I go to bed, doing 2 to 3. So I'm doing like 8 to 15 dabs a day. It was getting pretty ridiculous. And I'm not like stoned all the time, but I just felt like I was like, everything
Right,
was slow
right.
motion for a second. And in the back of my throat, I kept just having to be like,
Yeah,
like
from
the
the dabs.
yeah. So I just couldn't. I cut way back, and I smoke like I don't know 3 bowls a day now, maybe 4, compared to 8 to 15 dabs.
Right.
It's a massive difference. And I am liking like smoking the herb again. You know, like because you do get all the other like amino acids and plant fats and all the other things that come with smoking the plant and the terpenes, and it's just such a wonderful blend. And if you know, plant medicine to me, raw unadulterated plant medicine, I always like forget like how amazing it is. You know,
Right.
it's so convenient to dab. Like I'm about to get a dab pen when I go to Minnesota, so I don't have to be smoking weed in the hotel room. But but you
Yeah, I
know,
use the cartridges, you know.
yeah, they're super convenient. I'm about to get a cartridge for, like I said, for Minnesota. It's like
Yeah.
it's the only choice because I have to go to a convention. What am I gonna do? Sneak off at a convention and roll a joint? Like
And then when you smoke it, it's going to smell. And where do you smoke it? You have to do it outside. Nobody's allowed to smoke anymore inside. You know, it's
Well,
just,
and the worst part, Minnesota. I'm going to Minnesota,
it's
and
not
Minnesota's a
legal.
dry
So
state.
they don't even have medical, do they?
No, I don't think so. So it's a little scary. It's a little scary for the stoner side. I miss the thrill though.
Yeah, right. I
But
mean, it
that's
is real convenient now. Back in the day, like you said, you used to roll a joint, you know, then find a place
I,
to smoke it. Blah,
I,
blah,
I do want
blah.
to go back to like the racism part of the riots. Like I do think racism is alive and well. Unfortunately, I've seen it way too many times with my own 2 eyes, and because of my complexion, I feel like people are real comfortable around me because they just like assume I'm white or like I'm like on the white side, like some people have said some really racist fucked up shit to me and I'm just
In
like,
front of me because they think
yeah.
because you're white, they can, yeah, I've met so many, yeah, people do that to
But I
me
do
too.
think that like it's really wrong to accuse every white person of being that way because like I've always joked around and said I'm more racist towards white people. Like I've
Well, I
always
can
said
tell
that
you
my
the
whole life.
truth. I like people of color better than I like white
Facts.
people. I will tell you that. I live in Puerto Rico. There's a reason I live in Puerto Rico. I like Latino culture. I always have. When I lived in
Same.
California, I liked the Latino culture that was there. I liked the fact that it was very blended in to the culture that was out there. And same thing, you know, I like hip hop music. I've always liked other cultures because I felt that the white culture was boring. White people were boring, stuffy, you know, and stuck up. Now, I also grew up in a city until I was 6 years old. So I got kind of used to that style. I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut here, and there's a big Puerto Rican community here, and I grew up right in the middle of it. And then I moved out to a suburb, Westport, which I don't know if you know about that town, but that's like high, you know, high
Like Westport,
class.
Massachusetts.
It's Westport, Connecticut,
Oh, okay.
which is, I wouldn't say it's on the same level as Greenwich, but it's one of those type of towns, you know. You know what I'm saying?
La di da.
WASP, WASP, a lot of commuters who live there, who work in the city, take the train in every door there. Celebrities live there. Paul Newman was my neighbor. Martha Stewart lived there. So it was like a hoity-toity neighborhood. And I'll tell you, I had culture shock going
Mm.
there. And I freaking hated it because it was all white. I mean, there was literally one black kid in my school, one. And I came from the city where I'm used to me being the
Mm.
minority, you know, like, or at least an equal amount of distribution, you know, a lot of more diversity, let's say, in the classroom and with the
Yep.
kids I would play with. And so it was a big culture shock for me, and I really hated it. And I really think that move actually probably put me on the path that I went on, as far as
Did
just
you did you start feeling like
rebelling.
lone wolf? Like,
Yes, yes, very lone wolf and very much seeking out the cities. You know, like I
mm,
couldn't wait to get my license and go hang out in the city so I could hang out in the hood. I wanted to hang out in the hood because that's where all the action was. Do you know what I mean? So I couldn't wait. And that's what I did, And so it was very interesting childhood. That I look at it today, and again, growing up, seeing the '60s, being on the side of the protesters, rooting for them as I'm watching them on TV, and I'm a little kid going, "Yeah, go hippies, go Black Panthers, yeah." And my parents are like, "No, those are bad people." No, they're good. They're cool.
Yeah, you don't understand.
Yeah, no. No, I loved it. But my grandmother was very racist, and fortunately, my parents weren't. They were like Kennedy type of '60s people, so they were not racist. They were very open to be that, and I wasn't raised that way. And being raised around a bunch of, other races actually helped, so I was always exposed to that and actually enjoyed being around people who were very diverse. I found that I learned a lot. I used to think Puerto Rican kids were much smarter than me because they could speak 2 languages. And I was like, wow, those kids are smart. They could speak 2 languages and I can't, and I wanted to hang out with them. It's like, these are smart kids. And so to me, I don't get it. I don't get the whole mentality of racism. To me, it's for people who are very shallow. My mom used to say it was ignorance. Racist people are ignorant. Racism is ignorance. And I'm like, well, I'm not ignorant, so, and that's the way I see it. And it, again, like I say, here we go again. It's 2022. Like you say, there's still racism all over. And I think it's because a lot of it is systemic.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it is systemic. From the day we made, we banished slavery, we were just coming up with other ways to keep people of color down, the Jim Crow laws. And then this brings us right back to cannabis, the way that they made cannabis illegal, the propaganda campaign that they put out to make cannabis illegal was totally racially motivated. All the stuff that they were saying. And this, we're not talking that long ago. We're talking 80 years ago. And the stuff that they were saying is stuff that is appalling today. Cannabis makes Black people feel as good as white people.
Weren't they saying like cannabis makes Mexicans like come rape your wife or something
your
like
white
that?
people? Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. And then your children are gonna go crazy at these parties. And they made that movie Reefer Madness, and William Hearst planted all these fake stories in his newspapers, about people going crazy, smoking weed, man kills family. And it wasn't true. They were just complete fabricated misinformation, that they were putting out there to not only get the public against cannabis but to get the government against it.
Mm-hmm.
And they got in cahoots with Harry Anslinger, who was, I guess you would have the head of what you would call now the DEA. I forget what they called it back then. And he needed something to go, he needed an enemy because prohibition had just ended. So who's he going to go after? No more bootleggers, no more moonshiners. Alcohol's legal again. I need something to do. So these guys,
I need to make some money.
Yeah, William Hearst was mad at the Mexicans for burning down one of his tree farms in protest of the poor wages and the horrible way he was treating them, because he was using migrant workers to cut the trees down and make his paper for his newspapers. Because William Hearst was not only a newspaper, baron, he printed the paper too. He was a lumber paper guy, so he had both ends covered. And he was pissed off. And they also, but really what was in the back of their mind, the 3 of them, which was Rockefeller, Hearst, and DuPont, plus a couple other industrial people, realized that with the invention of the decorticator, that hemp would be a threat to their businesses. because hemp could do everything that they did. And now with the decorticator, it made it much easier to process than it ever was.
Yep.
So their intention from the beginning was to make hemp illegal. What they presented to Harry Anslinger was cannabis, which was a medicine at that time, which doctors were prescribing in a liquid form, as a tincture or even as a powder. They would sell it. They weren't selling flower back then to smoke. It was hemp, and then you had the cannabis extracts. Nobody in America at that time even knew you could smoke cannabis and get high until they told them you could.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was they got together with Anslinger, created this whole campaign against cannabis. We're talking corporate again, right? The robber barons, the big guys who started all this crap back in the Industrial Revolution. They got together, consorted with Harry Anslinger, who is the government, basically the government agency, put together this whole propaganda campaign against cannabis with all that stuff, Reefer Madness. They produced Reefer Madness. They funded that movie. And probably all the other ones. There was a few other ones, The Devil's Weed. There was a few. They were pretty cool, funny when you watch them today. But
The Devil's Lettuce.
Yeah, I think it was called The Devil's Lettuce. And, make your children turn into beasts, sexually crazed madmen, and all this, and then they smoked the weed and their eyes would pop out. And, it was crazy. But it worked. The government banned it. And as they were banning cannabis, right at the end, they tacked on hemp, which was their target all along.
Yeah, a lot of people, I always say this, a lot of people don't know this, but it started in Massachusetts, 1910 to 1913. In that area, they made Indian hemp illegal. And that was like the first start of like setting things off. They started, like you said, with hemp. They did that for about 20 years, went after marijuana because it was the component that they could really like nail into people's heads that it's so bad for you and you're going to die and be bad and be a bad parent, be a bad person and lazy and stupid. You're going to rot your brain away. Like all this crazy shit because that was the easiest thing that they could attach and attack. And, Big Pharma was a big part of that as well.
Big Pharma was just forming back then. This is another thing. I don't know if you know who started the American Medical Association.
Who's that? The petroleum
John D.
companies?
Rockefeller.
Yeah.
John D. Rockefeller. And Big Pharma was a big component of that. And if you notice, right at that same time, they also took heroin and cocaine off the pharmacopoeia as well. Because when they made it illegal, they took it off the pharmacopoeia, so it was no longer being able to be used as medicine anymore. And this is what allowed them to bring in what they called patent medicines. Patent medicines were medicines they could patent. You see, they couldn't patent cannabis. They couldn't patent cocaine. They couldn't patent heroin. But they could patent their version of it. And
as long as they made a change to it.
This was all the advent of Big Pharma. They had to eliminate those from the pharmacopoeia so they could create their own versions of it, which they could patent. And it was called patent medicine. And Bayer was one of the first patent medicine companies, They used to sell morphine. They used to have Bayer branded heroin, Bayer branded cannabis. So they were a pharmaceutical company. You could find the old bottles. And then it switched all over to pharma and the AMA. All these things happened during the Industrial Revolution. Those guys directed all of that. Mostly John D. Rockefeller. He put in all these different things. He put in the League of Nations, which is now the United Nations after World War I. And that's a whole nother freaking rabbit hole we can go down. And then he put in the American Medical Society, the educational system. They designed the curriculum for that too. So these guys had their hand in everything. They, people don't realize how much they have shaped this country since the Industrial Revolution. We lived in an entirely different country before the Industrial Revolution. It was a different world. the world we live in now was developed at the turn of the century during the Industrial Revolution. These guys put the building blocks together for our modern world. And knowing what we know about them now, we know their intentions weren't good. You know, you look at their quotes, you know, they're just looking, all they were looking for with the education system was to educate a workforce, obedient workers. So the school system is set up, obviously, as indoctrination. Well, they set that up. They set up the public school system. So, you know, and then medical, we see how the medical system is set up. It's the medical mafia. It's the medical monopoly. They control everything. Well, they built the building. They set that up. So our modern world is pretty much shaped by these guys, these robber barons, these billionaires. And what we're seeing now is the fourth industrial revolution, like they're saying, which is the digital revolution, the digital world order. And what you're seeing now is the new players emerge, the new Rockefellers, the new Hearst, the new JP Morgans, in Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. These are the new generation of robber barons that are going to shape our next, you know, the next 100 years, just like those guys shaped our current society. And so, and they're the same type of people, billionaires who run big corporations, you know, just like, you know, Rockefeller had oil, Hearst had the paper, DuPont had all the fabrics. And then there's, I forgot who did the railroads, but I mean, these were all the infrastructure of our country.
Weren't a lot of the railroads built by China?
Built by Chinese laborers, yes. But financed, I forgot who was the big baron back then for the railroads. Could have been Carnegie or Morgan. One of them was heavily into the railroads. Because there was a group of about 5 or 6 billionaires that kind of shaped the country. And we're seeing the same thing now. You know, we're seeing Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, George Soros, all these people who are billionaires who have a lot of money, and they use their influence to shape. I mean, it's no different than Rockefeller starting the Medical Association than Bill Gates funding the World Health Organization. You know what I mean? So who do they really answer to? Well, follow the money. Who does the world, you know, Bill Gates is your biggest donor. Who do you answer to? Bill Gates. You know, and this is what people need to realize when they watch mainstream media, right? When you turn on the TV and every goddamn thing you watch is sponsored by Pfizer, and I literally mean it. Sponsored by Pfizer, sponsored by, we're talking the Academy Awards, everything. Sponsored. So who do they really answer to? You know, if they're their sponsor. And so they can't say things that Pfizer won't like. You know, so this is how they control the narrative. This is how they shape our world. Yeah. And now we're seeing a whole new world emerge. I hate to say it, but we really are. The old world is basically falling apart. The old systems, the old, you know, and those of us who have been aware for a while saw this coming. I don't know about you, but I saw it coming.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know how.
There's a reason I'm into crypto and everything, because I do think that it's like the next thing that's, and you know, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to, you know,
you got to figure out how you're going to make your way through this, just like our grandparents had to make their way through the Depression, because we're looking at something similar to that. We are looking at something as another, as harsh as another Depression. I really think so. And I know my grandfather made it through that. You know, they had to change the way they lived. There's a lot of different, you know, and same thing with World War II. You know, that caused a lot of strain on our country. And we're looking, you know, I was just watching a video today about how they had food rationing and all these different kind of things, you know. So you couldn't get meat because meat was going to the troops. You know, so they had to live a whole nother life during World War II, but my parents made it through. So you have to figure out ways now. Okay, so like you say, we know they're going to a cashless society. We know the dollar is about to probably be changed as the world's reserve currency. And that, you know, people, these are the things that are really what's going on, right? That the general public doesn't pay attention to, right? All they know is that when they go to the grocery store, their prices are going up. You know, all they know is when they go to the gas pump, the price is going up. And all they know is that's Russia's fault. Because why is it Russia's fault? Because that's what the media tells them, you know. And all they know is there's food shortages. But, you know, you and I know the reality is that this economy is about to collapse, you know. When you print that much money, it has no longer any value. And being the world's reserve currency holds a certain status, and your money has to have a certain amount of value. And with other countries now, like China and Russia, demanding that people trade in their native currencies, this weakens the dollar even more. And eventually, which a lot of people don't know history, but the British sterling used to be the world's reserve currency. And they were removed after World War II. And we took over, the dollar took over as the world's reserve currency. If you look at the history of the world's reserve currency, it's been switched many times. That's what they do. And we're due for a switch. And I believe they're going to come up with a world reserve currency that's digital. You know, but what currency is it going to be based off of? Like if you have a digital currency, it has to be attached to something physical. So is it going to be the Chinese yuan, or is it going to be, I don't think it'd be the ruble, because the ruble ain't worth shit. But they're talking about the Chinese yuan, you know, or they're talking about a gold backed. But personally, I don't know if there's enough gold anymore in the world's reserve. In other words, with the amount of money we have printed now, I don't think if you added up all the world's gold reserves, I don't know that it would even cover it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because there used to be the dollar, you know, used to be backed up by gold. Yep. So you knew when you were spending your dollar that it had some kind of backing behind it, that there was gold and Fort Knox that was backing it. It's backed by nothing now. It's the petrodollar. It's backed by gas. It's backed by nothing. Yeah, so these are the things that realize that people, when they're worried about Will Smith getting punched at the Oscars, and, you know, support Ukraine, you know, and all these different things that the mainstream media pushes to you, the real issues are being swept under the rug. You know, the wool is being pulled over your eyes. And then one day what happens is it all comes down. Boom.
And here's the thing,
like a fucking train, and you're not ready
when you say like things like that, and when I've said things like that in the past, people get it misconstrued like we don't care what's happening to the people in Ukraine, and that's not true. It sucks because it's the leadership of our countries that basically have a dick measuring contest, and the people have to suffer and die. And that's fucked up. That's the thing we're saying, like they distract you with everything they're doing in Ukraine, which, you know, like if you pay attention to history, they've funded both sides of the war since fucking Napoleon. Like,
well, somebody does. I mean, you know, regardless of where the money comes, which country it comes through, the money all comes from the same fucking people. It's the same banks. It's all the central banks. They're funding Russia. They're funding everybody. So really, who's winning the war? Who wins every war?
Yeah, it's the people that we don't talk about. You know, they say Elon's the richest man in the world. Like, come on, really?
No, he's not. He's the richest man that they'll let you see. Yeah, but I'm sure Lord Rothschild has a lot more money than Elon Musk. I'm sure the Vatican has a lot more money than Elon Musk. I'm sure the Queen and the royal family have a lot more money than Elon Musk. And there's other people whose names we don't even know.
Yeah, like sheiks and shit like that.
Yeah, who have a lot more money than Elon Musk, but they don't make it public.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knows about Lord Rothschild and that his family owns, you know, the Federal Reserve. His family owns the IMF, and his family owns the other one, the global. I forgot what they call it, but there's three big ones.
BlackRock?
No, it's another monetary fund, the IMF, and there's another one, and they own them all. They're the central banks. They're basically all the central banks. They own them all. They control them all. So who really benefits from any war? The people who print the money.
Yep. It's
follow the money. It only leads to one place. The money can only come from one place. It's the banks. And I'm not saying there's only one bank. There's just branches of the same bank. You know, we're all under a centralized banking system. Yep. And that includes Russia and China. There's only a couple of countries that don't participate in it. And one is North Korea. One is Iran. There used to be 7 of them, but we've knocked them off. We've knocked a few of them off.
It's weird. Weird coincidence that it was Iraq, Syria, Libya,
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
All weren't part of the central banking system. Now they are. Isn't it interesting?
That's weird. I don't know how that happens.
Gee, I don't know. You know, the wars. They're bad people. You had to get rid of them. Look how nice Libya is now compared to what it was. Look how nice Iraq was compared to what it was before the war.
Yeah.
You know, it's beautiful now. A lot of burned out buildings, you know, it's great. And if you look at pictures of how it was before, it was a thriving city. So I don't know. How bad are dictators? They're only bad if they don't participate in the central banking system.
Yeah, we don't have to bomb the whole village and city. We can just go after the leader. It's like, this is leaders, instead of putting their people through war, should have to put gloves on and go fight in an octagon. Like no rules, just fight to the death. And whoever wins, I guess you take over the country. I don't know, but something.
Yeah, I mean they really should, because
they won the war at least.
It is a ridiculous loss of life. And like you said earlier, it's their game. It's their chess game.
Yep.
We're the pawns. If you look at the chessboard, we are the pawns, you know, or the soldiers are let's say the pawns. And all the people who die in these wars, we're collateral damage. You know, that's it. For their game, their power games.
Mm-hmm.
You think the people in the Ukraine care about what's going on in the U.S.? No. You think anybody in the U.S. cared what was going on in Ukraine before this? No. It was the people didn't. It's all about the politicians, the governments, and the banks, and the corporations. They're all involved in this because they all make money from it. Joe Biden just came out and said war is good for the country. It creates jobs and people make money from it. What does that tell you? What is the mentality here that a loss of life is fine? Massive loss as long as people make money? Come on.
It's fucked up. It's really fucked up. They really are just playing with our lives, literally our lives.
It's always been this way, though.
Mm-hmm.
People, we want world. There's never been world peace. When has there ever been freaking world peace? There's always somebody at war. You know what I mean? So I say it's an unattainable goal,
What's up, Jeff?
I just don't see it. But yeah, it's been this way forever. What do you think Vietnam was? Vietnam's another proxy war. Yeah, all of it. They're all just like proxy wars. They're started for other reasons than what they tell you. There's always a political or monetary reason behind the war. It's not a humanitarian thing. It's not to free people ever. I don't think the people in Iraq feel any more free now than they did under Saddam Hussein. I'm sorry. You know, we bring them freedom. We didn't bring them anything but devastation and a new fake government. You know? Yeah, there's my
Well,
boy
well,
Jack. What's
well,
up, brother?
just look at what happened in Afghanistan. You know, like we gave them freedom, and then as soon as we leave, the country's taken over again.
Right away by the Taliban.
It's like because that's the way they plan that shit. You know, like it's
Mm-hmm.
we act like we didn't create the Taliban or at least fund them heavily, and we didn't create
We did.
ISIS, and like
We
it's
did.
that's the thing that really pisses me off. Like we have this double standard of caring. Like we're supposed to care about a certain country that's getting bombed, but not the 7 countries we're currently bombing.
Right. What about Libya? You know, what about Syria? Syria is under a constant siege, you know,
Hmm.
between Russia and Iran and all the different interests that are in there. You know, what about what Israel is doing to Palestine on a daily basis? You know what I mean? It's you don't talk about that kind of stuff. You know,
Hmm.
because we're the good guys, right? The good guys. We do what we do is for good. What Putin does is for evil. You know. Yeah, the devil's lettuce is money. He is absolutely right. The devil's lettuce is money. You know, and if you
It is money. That should be what currency is backed off of. Cannabis. There's plenty of
you know
that.
what they used to hemp used to be considered currency back in
Yeah.
the day. You know, you could trade for hemp. You know,
That's that's what I'm trying to work back to, you know, like everything that I've been working on lately, I stopped focusing on growing for like cannabinoids and I'm growing for fiber and for carbon capturing. Cause I'm like,
Mhm.
oh shit, like hemp is like a super, super duper plant, like for carbon capturing when it's
Absolutely.
alive and after it's dead, you know, the
Yep.
utilities you use it in, and discovering that, you know, they're already making hemp lumber and they're
Yep.
making hempcrete. It's not quite, you know, there to support a house, I guess. But the fact
Well, it
that they're
hasn't
already
been
doing
approved
it,
for building yet in certain states. Certain states have.
yeah, yeah, but you can't just like cast a whole wall of hempcrete yet. You have to like build in some kind of frame and then cast the hempcrete around it
Right.
essentially. But you know, for now, it's like we're getting back into the infancy of hemp. Like at one point, we knew how to do this.
We're 80
We
years behind. Remember?
100 even. It was in
Yeah.
1913 when they started illegalizing this shit. You know, like.
In mass. Right. Right.
And like a lot of states followed, especially around New England, that around that the early 1910s into the 1920s, and every state started to follow. It really was like a lead up to the reefer madness, like we were
Right.
talking about. So
Right.
we're talking about, you know, 110 years since that happened in the state that I'm currently growing in. So that's like 5 generations of people that have been told that cannabis is bad. So much so that like my dad doesn't even talk to me, mostly because of this shit and like one other stupid thing. But it's mostly this shit. He like calls me he thinks I'm a drug dealer, like all this crazy shit. I'm like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dad.
Right.
Like,
And
you're
that's
the one
because
who has a love for.
misinformation.
Exactly, and he knows, like, he's the one who knows, like, he understands plants better than anybody I've ever met in my life, and he's he's just being very ignorant, like, it's kinda ridiculous, and, um, but that's what I have to deal with, like, I'm not being called a drug dealer because I wanna do cannabis-related stuff, like, it's absolutely fucking bullshit.
No, I agree. And my mom was the same way. And and they're even, they're old. She was in her 80s. But what, you
Don't be
know,
afraid, Jeff, things are gonna get real, but just don't be afraid, be prepared. That's all you gotta
yeah,
do.
that's what it is. That's what it is. Be prepared, and you go back, and that's a big thing I'm on now. Um, is self sustainability. I think people, and not only people but communities, need to learn how to become more self sustainable.
Mm,
One thing they can't take away from you is the dirt and the soil and seeds. So you can still buy good seeds. You can buy them online. You can get soil. Hell, if you use the same soil you grew wheat in, you would have a fantastic garden. So don't, there's no lack of nutrients out there or knowledge how to grow. But people can grow their own food, and you'd be surprised at the amount of food you can grow over the summer. If you have a decent sized piece of land, and even if you don't, if you grow the right crops, if you grow potatoes, if you grow tomatoes, anything that you can. So not only do you have the fresh vegetables during the summer, you also have foods that you can to save for over the winter, or whenever you want to use them. So if you grow things like tomatoes, you can the tomatoes, and then you always have tomato sauce at least, and pasta is very sustainable. You can it has a long shelf life. So that way, okay, at least I'll have some freaking pasta to eat with some tomato sauce that I grew myself. You don't have to, and then there's other things, your beans, there's a lot of things you can grow in your own yard for now. I mean, they haven't taken that away from us yet, but you never know. They banned people taking the rainwater.
Yeah.
That's another
you're not allowed
thing.
to do that in Massachusetts.
Right. And certain states have banned it, and certain states put restrictions on solar. And again, that goes, Florida has some of the strictest restrictions on solar. The Sunshine State, where solar should be used all over the place, right, has the most restrictions on solar. But they haven't stopped us. I mean, the problem with living in the States is if you want to solarize your house, you have to plug it into the grid.
Yep.
So you can't solarize your house with batteries and get off the grid. You're, just cut yourself off from the grid and generate your own energy.
Yeah, if the grid goes down, your house power goes down even during the daytime, because then you're just
if you have the solar
energy.
though, there's your backup. Right. Only unless it's daytime. Right.
No, the solar system is directly tied into all the electrical equipment. So what happens is they stop the backfeed to your house and feed it to the generator to try to power back up. Like they're
so they take your solar to try and see.
Oh yeah,
that's a
problem. If you lease it and shit, like you have there is ways if you like buy the panels outright and install them yourself, which is definitely a bitch.
Or you can get the Tesla wall, right? I mean, he basically has a system, a home system.
Yeah, they have the Tesla tiles too, like the roof tiles.
Yeah, that also you can buy it pre-made. The question is can you afford it? When is solar going to be affordable for the average person?
Yeah, it's been around for a long time, and then just somehow it's not affordable.
Not affordable yet, right? Or not feasible. Now down here, they're pretty lax with solar. Down here in Puerto Rico, if I want to solarize my house, go for it. They don't care, But that's one thing. You can grow your own food. You can, try to go solar. If your state allows it, put a cistern out in your backyard and start saving water. Because you never know if the public water supply is going to get cut off. You don't know what could happen. So, the thing is just to try and and buy some shelf-stable food. Dried beans, you can make a nice bean soup. Rice always is a good shelf-stable food. Potatoes, all things like that. And, just have them around. I bought 2 of those big survival food bins just to have around.
With all the MREs and shit in them?
Yeah. They're predicting food shortages. I'm not looking at Armageddon, but I do believe we're going to get to something that's close to the Depression. And that was not fun times. That really was not fun times. But I believe that's what we're headed towards. And it's common. I mean, what happened in World War II? Food rationing, food shortages. If we really are headed towards a world war, which I don't know if we are, it's too early to tell, but it could go that way. You kind of got to be prepared for any contingency.
Weird how history just repeats itself, huh?
Yeah, well, that's something people need to learn as well. If you want to predict the future, just study the past. It may not always repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. You know what I mean? If it's not the exact same thing, it's something close. You know, it's almost like we're running off scripts. You know, they just have certain scripts that they use, certain narratives, and they recycle them. Look how they recycled racism. That's not the first time they recycled it. They brought it back in the 80s for a little while. You know what I mean? They had a lot of racial. I know when I was living in New York City, there was tons of racial problems there. That's when Bernie Goetz shot the kids in the subway. They had the Washington Square Park wilding thing where they accused black kids of raping a white woman, and then they found out it wasn't them. We had Tawana Brawley faking her attack. So there was racial stuff in the 80s. But it didn't hit the nationwide like this BLM did, like George Floyd, you know, like that other one, Trayvon. They'll take a single isolated incident, magnify it, amplify it, make it like it's happening all over the country, and then get people riled up in a frenzy about it. You know, it's not even organically real. That's one thing I can say about the 60s. That was organic. That movement literally came from the people. I believe that these latest movements were all contrived and created by the media.
Oh yeah.
Them over amplifying and overblowing the story, you know. And
what they do best.
Yeah, and you know, I really do think they were, because they learned the media machine is much more powerful than it was in the 60s. So you know, they got a lot more tools at their disposal. Then they squashed that revolution pretty quick. You know, but it took a lot. You know, it took a lot less, I would say, to end the movement. All it really took was Kent State, you know, and then there was another incident that wasn't as well publicized that happened, a similar incident where the National Guard killed some students, some black students down south for the same reason they were protesting.
What about when the Philadelphia cops bombed a black neighborhood?
Right. Yes. See, so that kind of stuff ended the protest pretty quickly because people started getting killed. And then, of course, Nixon with the war on drugs, that was his way of really killing the movement, because what he did was go after the leaders for drug charges. You know, so he was able to put a lot of these dissidents in jail for drugs, and he killed the movement. But you know, that's the first time that I've ever seen where the movement itself was a unified movement of the youth. So you had the civil rights movement going on at the same time as the anti-war movement, which was basically the hippies, but they joined together in protests quite often. They would protest together quite often. They would support each other quite often because they had common interests. Because the anti-war movement, don't forget, black kids were getting sent to war first. So it definitely tied in with the, you know, the civil rights movement, because black kids were getting killed in the war too. So the war was universal between the two movements. So they joined together. It really scared the establishment. You know, it really did, because they couldn't use divide and conquer on the masses because we were unified. And that's why they went to such lengths with the war on drugs to stop it. Nowadays, you see how it's different. It's not the similar type of movement. You don't hear peace and love anymore. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately.
You know what I mean? And it's there. That's not even in the equation. And now you have factions. They don't protest together. They go to the protest and fight each other. You know what I mean? So you have these Antifa guys who will go to the protest, and they're not even protesting. They're not even protesting what the protest is for. They're just there to fight with the other side. You know what I'm saying? So we're not unified now. And that's why the government, I don't think, is as scared of us as they used to be.
Yep.
I do not, you know what I mean? The government used to be scared of the public. The public was, I think, a lot, I don't want to say smarter, but a lot more, they thought more back then.
Yeah.
Let's put it that.
They used their brains.
They used their brains more back then. I don't know the difference, you know, but I can definitely see our society is not as up on things as they used to be. They're really distracted by a lot of crap. And maybe that's just because there are more distractions. You know, there are probably just more distractions than there were back then. You know, I only had, 3 or 4 channels that you had programming on.
Damn.
And other than that was radio and newspaper.
Yeah, it was very easy to make a message, you know, like be heard.
Yeah, you could be heard a lot easier. And believe it or not, back then the censorship wasn't even as bad.
Yep.
You know, you could get your voice out there a little easier. I mean, they used to have TV shows where the two sides would actually debate each other. You know, they would have Martin Luther King on with a white supremacist. You know, they were about hearing both sides of the argument. And it's not that way anymore. You know,
no, it devolved into the indoctrination, like you were saying, and like with the schools and everything too. It's funny because people don't know it, but a lot of the modern day education comes from what is Germany today. It was Prussia.
Schule. Yes, that was the Schule.
Yep.
And that was what school is now. Absolutely.
And Prussia made this modern education system that made their citizens much more obedient, much more harder workers, more likely to work in the factories that they need and everything, and just do what they're told more. So the U.S., you know, slowly started adopting this into our school systems, and voila, here we are. And kids are getting fully indoctrinated into everything by their teachers.
Now, you say it was Prussia, right? Now we all know Prussia was modern day Germany.
Yep.
So they put that system in before World War II. Now look how the people reacted. What kind of citizenry it ended up making, right? Because those were the adults, the children who were indoctrinated into that Schule system, which is where the word school comes from now. Look what they did. Look how easily they were manipulated by one man. So there you go. That's what that type of system, that's the type of society it's going to give you. A very obedient, you know, mind controlled, brainwashed society. And look what they did. Look what it ended up. You know, and you're right. We use the same system here in the U.S. That's, you know, and we got it from them.
All it takes is that one leader, and that's honestly, I was like, dude, Trump is gonna be like, that's like, feels like it's gonna be close to the next Hitler. Not because, I don't know, he was just very divisive. He was extremely divisive in everything that he did. He definitely didn't go about things in a bipartisan way whatsoever.
No.
And it just and now, you know, he doesn't want to take any blame for anything, but he's like, oh, you know, the vaccine was all me. The vaccine was all me.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
right. Well, fuck you, Trump. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You're right. You can blame him for this.
Yep.
Even all you Trump supporters who are anti-vax, right? But your boy is the one who rushed it and fast-tracked it.
Yep.
So, I mean, you know, we wouldn't be in this mess.
And the thing about it is everybody likes to say Trump isn't a politician. Well, here's the thing about politicians. Exactly. Who's in the pockets of the politicians? I mean, the other way around. Who's in the pockets of the billionaires like Trump?
The
politicians. Yeah. Because he's paying off. How do you think he becomes best friends with Rudy Giuliani? Come on. How do you think he pulled off all the shit he did in New York City? How much do you think he was lacing Rudy Giuliani's fucking pockets? He's been a politician for a very long time. Just not in the forefront.
On the other side.
I think they thought it would be some kind of cute experiment to put him in the forefront, and he just kind of like lost his mind a little bit.
Well, Trump served his purpose. You and I both know presidents are not elected, they're selected.
Yep.
I don't think the powers that be were ever going to give Hillary Clinton a shot because of her tainted background. You know, too much can come out on her. She's got a really shady background, you know, and plus she's not likable. People didn't like her. So I think, you know, when you talk about leaders, Trump is probably the closest thing we've had to like that cult of personality, charismatic leader, say like you know, like Hitler or whatever. But I wouldn't say he's the exact same as Hitler, but you're right. He is of that ilk, driven by ego, you know, very cult of personality type of thing. And people will listen to him and follow him. And it was what was missing from politics. You know, Obama, as charismatic as he was, it was, and a great orator. He could do a speech better than anyone else. It was pretty obvious that he was a puppet of the system because he had no new ideas. He was just pretty much trying to put through whatever the powers that be told him to put through.
And let's be honest, he's definitely running Biden's whole shit in the back.
He is now, yeah. You can tell just by his comment. Well, let's be real. Biden is incompetent. He's no leader. Never was. Never was. Joe Biden was always seen as a second banana. And as a low-level congressman, he was not even that good. You know what I mean? He got caught a few times doing a bunch of shady stuff in Congress. So, he's never been known as a great politician, you know, but it was the best they had because God forbid, they tried to do Bernie Sanders, right?
Or Kamala Harris.
Oh, she was horrible. They don't even like her as vice president. I mean, she's got a worse rating than him. She has a worse approval rating than Biden. And she's terrible. I mean, they put up a couple of real chumps, puppets.
Yep.
Because they knew they had the election in the bag. And I don't want to say, you know, how they knew, but they knew they had the election in the bag because they had the media on their side. You know, they knew they had enough people who were sick of Trump. That had it been more legit with less censorship.
I wanted Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, she would have been great too. I like Tulsi Gabbard as a choice. Because now look at her. Now look at her. She's definitely showing her true colors by speaking out against, you know, what they're doing. You know, and so she would have been a definitely better choice. But they knew she wasn't. You know, they know about her profile that she's not going to go along with what they want. You know, when I say they, you know, it's the corporations and it's, you know, the bankers. You know what they call the deep state. You know, it really does exist. The deep state does exist. And you can show a chart of it if you really wanted to. You could put it down on paper and show people, but they don't care. They don't want to listen. But you know, one thing a friend of mine says is that you always have to remember you don't need a majority to make a change. You know, you don't need a majority of people to make a change. And you can almost prove that with the LGBTQ community. So reality is they're not the majority of the population at all. They're 10%, right? Mm-hmm. But just look at the attention they've been able to garner for themselves, and look how they have been able to dominate the social discourse over the past couple of years. So and they've been able to make changes. So you don't need a majority to make change. And then that includes the change in the collective consciousness as well. So, you know, I see we're getting to a point where a lot of people are becoming awake, or at least aware of the BS. And there are a lot of people who are starting to push back now. this whole thing with Elon Musk buying Twitter, that's a big pushback on the censorship. So you got a billionaire guy who's really part of the establishment, as much as you want to say he's a rebel, whatever, there's still things that he does that are kind of like questionable, like Neuralink and the whole Skynet thing, whatever he's doing with that internet there.
Yeah,
up
we
in the
just
sky.
never talk about it, right?
As nice as electric cars are, they're also very easy to control. So
yeah, and they do massive pollution too to create them.
Yes, to create them. They may not emit massive pollution, but they, in their own way, they are not environmentally safe. It's the same with the batteries, that are in them. But truthfully, the powers that be want us to be on an all electrical grid, because you can control an electrical grid.
Yeah.
So the more electric cars you have, I mean, literally, you can get to a point where if somebody says something that you don't like or whatever, if they don't have their social credit score on the right place, you could make their car not start.
Yep.
You can make it so they can't drive, and they can do it remotely. They can track you a lot easier with an electric car. You know what I mean? Especially once they get the whole 5G grid really set up and running. All these things, all this new technology is just making it more and more possible to control every aspect of your life. And I guess, what I've seen over my 60 years of life is that the biggest narrative change that I've seen, and it happened right after 9/11, is the mentality. America used to be very freedom-loving people. And most Americans would have put their freedom over their safety. Like, freedom was our number one, right? Our country's based on freedom. I noticed that the mentality of the country is now safety over freedom. And people are willing to give up more and more of their freedoms to feel safe.
Yeah, it's not a good thing at all. It really is not, because once you give those up, they don't come back.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't. And 9/11 was the big turning point for that, mentality-wise. So you have these younger generations have been brought up with the mentality that it's better to be safe than free. And the government is the ones who will make you safe. And this is why you see a big push for socialism, because they want the government to take care of them. This is why you see a big push for censorship and things like that. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day when Americans were actually, a certain segment of the American population was actually pro-censorship. I mean, that was always like one of the tenets of our value system here in America, was that our freedom of speech and our right to bear arms was like one of our most important values. It was almost what made our country unique. It was almost what made our country our country.
Yep.
And to now see, the government, you almost expect them to just start heading more and more in a more totalitarian way.
They want more control, of course.
You expect that from them. But to see the public and the I wouldn't say the majority, but the large amounts of the public that went along and that are going along with this censorship narrative, with this mandatory vaccine narrative, with this, safety is more important than your freedom. Like, please tell me what to think. I don't want to see anything that I don't like on the internet. That whole mentality is going to lead to the destruction of our society as we know it. Because those are our core values, freedom, the right to bear arms, all those are like what were our core values. That's what I was raised on. In the American dream, Well, that's not almost even feasible anymore. You're going to own nothing and be happy, right?
Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, well, there's a whole other thing. Who elected those guys?
Yeah.
Who elected the World Economic Forum to determine the course of the world here?
Yeah, and the United
And
Nations, like who
who
elected
elected
them?
them? Who elected the United Nations? They're all people who are appointed, or they appoint themselves. I mean, the World Economic Forum is a private organization. It's Klaus Schwab founded it. It's it's not no more than NECAN. You know what I mean? It's a big yearly convention that they go to. It's just a difference in what they say there. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to some of the stuff that they're talking about.
It's fucking odd.
It's really scary. We're talking transhumanism as a reality, as the norm. Like they want us connected to machines. That's their goal.
And they've already got us
that
there,
they
right?
control. Yeah, not in our skin yet.
Yeah, basically,
but they basically have the framework set up.
You ever not have your phone where you normally have your phone and you feel like a phantom vibration or something?
Yep, in my pocket. Yeah,
exactly. They're already programming. They're like, we want you to know this.
No, yeah, they've done it, and people think this happened randomly. It certainly did not. It certainly did not happen randomly. They've just been waiting for the time when they had the technology to do what they needed to do. I mean, what I'd like to do someday is get actually the book 1984, right? And go through the pages and compare what they said would happen to what is happening.
I have that book in the other room.
I have it too. And I think I'm going to do that because already now, right, we're seeing the Ministry of Truth, right? And that's a part of it, and we're really literally seeing that in real life. We're seeing the doublespeak in real life, We're seeing all these things in real life that Orwell predicted, and then you look at a book like Brave New World, and we're seeing that too, as the breakdown of the family, in a social way. They don't realize, people don't realize the whole, a lot of this, the trans agenda, all this kind of thing. It's really, even the pandemic is depopulation. It's all, if people don't know what gender they are, they don't know about having kids. The birth rates are dropping. So, we're going to have, a definitely, Elon Musk, and I kind of agree with him. We're going to have a population crisis soon,
Yeah.
As far as new population.
Especially with, the impending depression, the gas prices ridiculously high. I'd never seen them so high in my life. And like, it's like, how can you want to have kids in that kind of economy that's going on right now? It's insanity. Like, most people are like, oh, well, that's kind of out of the question now, like.
Oh yeah, millennials and Generation Z are not breeding. They really aren't. They're barely even dating. Barely even. I mean, I'm not saying all of them, because there are still a group that believes in that. But I would say quite a few are not having children, not dating. I see it in my own family. I see it in my nieces and my nephews and things. They're of age, 18 years old, never had a date. Fuck, what were you doing by 18?
I was innocent boy.
You know what I mean? I mean, I couldn't wait to date, when I got out there. So I don't know. It's a different mentality. We live in a different world, unfortunately. People like you and I who might be aware, might be a little bit more awake, might be a little bit older, have to deal with it just as much as anyone, even though we didn't create it. You know what I mean? We have to live in this society.
It's like such a burden sometimes, because it's like, this thing that other people just can't even fathom. And you just gotta walk around all the time like, "Oh, I understand why this is happening, but I can't explain it to 95% of you guys because you'll
Right.
think I'm crazy."
You can't talk to anybody about it because they think you're crazy.
And they try
You
to,
know?
like, make us, like, outliers too, like, people love to assume I'm, like, the Trump supporter and everything. I'm like, "No, fuck no, not at all."
No, I
I like
don't
I
support politics. Period.
exactly, that's exactly my point. I haven't found really a good politician that I like besides Tulsi Gabbard. Like, she's the
Yeah,
only one that I really
it's
like that I'm like, I watch her and she's genuine and she's a veteran, and I think she's actually still active duty if I'm not mistaken, like,
probably.
or reserve.
Yeah, no, she's one of There. Look, you can't say all government is corrupt. There's still a few good ones who actually get in it
Yeah, but
for
like
the
a
people.
handful.
Yeah, but most people, most of them are in there to line their pockets.
The
For,
senator from Colorado, she's a little firecracker.
yeah, like I said, there's a few, but again, either they don't last long or they eventually get corrupted by the system.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
offers them the right amount
Everybody's
to
got a
put their
price,
vote
right?
to put their vote in the right place. Yeah, everybody has a price. So
I always wonder that, like,
most
if I was in that
politicians,
position and I was trying to change the world, like,
and then
could
it's
any
somewhat,
yeah,
yeah,
they're like somebody comes to you and like, "We'll give you $1 billion if you just
you
do
vote
what."
against this environmental bill, right?
Yep.
Because
Like,
that's how they do it. Some bill comes up that's going to regulate their industry.
yep,
They pay, they contribute to the senator's campaign so that they vote in the proper direction. That's why a lot of these things don't go through,
yep.
you know. And that's all the inflation, big corporate, and money.
Yeah,
Follow the yellow brick road, my friend.
in you gotta love raising interest rates because of inflation. When inflation is, like, I'm seeing a lot of weird shit around. I'm seeing a lot of these like food storage warehouses that are mysteriously burning down. I
Burning,
think there
planes
was like
crashing
40 of
into
them.
them,
Yep.
food distribution warehouses. And that's it. It's kind of obvious that it's being done purposely
Mm-hmm.
because you cut off the food supply, then you can control it. Then you're talking rationing. Then you're talking, encouraging people to, all these meat lists. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat meat. But I also don't eat that crap that they're putting out there, like these fake burgers and all this kind of stuff. But if you notice, they're trying to push people towards a more vegetarian, fake meat,
Mm-hmm.
fake
Processed foods.
processed 3D printed meat, 3D printed stuff, because they're going to shut down the food supply because they want to control it. They want to control what food you eat. Soylent Green, remember the movie? I don't know if you ever saw it.
No,
Old
I
movie
haven't.
from the 70s, bro. It was about Soylent Green. It was about the dystopian society of the future where there's no food and everybody's forced to eat this stuff called Soylent Green. And of course, the punchline at the end is that Soylent Green is made from people.
Oh, damn.
Great movie, Charlton Heston. A lot of social commentary in there. A lot of social commentary. They put out a lot of good stuff in the 70s. Planet of the Apes. That was all about racism.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, there's always some kind of subliminal message in pretty much
there's a
everything Hollywood
subtext.
has ever done.
Yeah, mostly. A lot of it is predictive programming these days. Less social commentary, more predictive programming. Unless it's like woke commentary, that's that's.
I'm so I just like I've you were talking about getting bans and suspended for shit from years ago. I've been pretty much not posting on Facebook. I post very like little stuff on Instagram that could ever possibly get me banned. Like I keep my nose clean because I'm sick of it. It's been
Oh, me
I've
too.
been in this probably not as long as you, but like since 2010, since I was like 20 years old, I've been like shit ain't right, and I've been looking into it, and everybody's always thought I was crazy, and more and more people slowly but surely are starting to realize a lot of the shit I said wasn't so crazy. But I'm just sick of it.
Well,
I'm
because it's
sick of it.
coming to fruition,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, that too. But
I
I'm
remember
done trying to convince anybody. It's like I'm just preparing for what's coming.
it's gotten to the point where it's gotten so blatant, and that's why I say more people are becoming aware, and there's more of a pushback. It's nice to see some alternative platforms popping up with a different narrative that are actually having some success. A guy like Joe Rogan getting more views than CNN has to say something. You know what I mean? And you
Hmm.
got the Daily Wire, which is putting out and getting a ton of views for much more conservative and actually anti woke and anti a lot of the politics that are going on. And there's a
Yeah, they
lot
make
of good,
jokes about it all.
yeah. But they're getting good viewership now. So people are turning away from the mainstream media. I used to consider myself a liberal, right? But
Mm.
that term liberal now means something totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And I find myself agreeing more with what you would call more conservative values,
Viewpoints. Yeah.
viewpoints, which weren't conservative before. They were just kind of middle of the road normal. Um, and now I'm finding myself identifying more with the conservative side than I do with the more liberal side. You know,
Yeah.
um,
There's some stuff I definitely just don't get on board with either side. I just
no,
can't.
a lot of things. I'm mostly in the middle. I mean, at heart, I'm an anarchist. If you
Yes.
were to ask me what would be the perfect type of quote unquote government, it would be non-government. With the anarchy. Unfortunately, that word, because of the media and because of the government, has gotten such a negative connotation. When you say I'm an anarchist, oh, what do you want to do? Burn down the government? Overthrow the government? And it's like, no, 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 no. Anarchy is a system where people rule themselves. It's a system of self-governance based
Mm.
on a group of common beliefs and values. It's where there's no hierarchy, where it's ruled by the people. It's actually a legitimate system. I don't want to call it government, but it's a legitimate societal system.
Mm.
But anarchy has been associated with chaos for so long. People assume, well, the only way you're going to get a government by the people is to overthrow the current government.
But how do you
Well,
stop bad people though? Like, cause I think about it like I have a farm, my neighbor doesn't. He just comes and steals my shit. So and then eventually he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna kill somebody in his family, so there's more food for me." Like,
right. Well, right. I mean, obviously, when you have it has to be almost from the ground up. So
right.
the only way today to even experiment with an anarchist type of society is you'd have to do a commune style,
Right.
like what
Yep.
the hippies wanted to do in the 60s. You'd have to do commune style without the sex and drugs, a little bit more organized and,
Oh, sex will happen.
sex will happen, but that won't be the primary purpose of it, But you'd almost have to do a commune where you got like-minded people together to form a like-minded community. So whereas everybody has a role, make sure you have a doctor there, make sure you have the right people there of like mind who are willing to establish a small community
Mm.
on their own and be self-sustaining and use that form of rule. It's kind of close to tribalism, where you create a tribe. You create your own tribe, pretty much.
I would love
Even
to
though
do
they're
that with a group of my friends. That would be
right,
really dope.
if you get right, and then you can experiment with it that way. It would have to be done in small pockets at first. It's hard to overthrow a government and get people used to self-governance because they're not used to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? They haven't been programmed for it. They haven't been trained for self-government for years and years and years and years. So they don't know what it's like to have no authority figure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to understand, from the dawn of time, we have been under some sort of authority figure telling us what to do. We're talking about from the Bible.
Yep.
We have always had some sort of authority over us. And so humans aren't used to ruling themselves as a group. Obviously, there are certain ones of us who are. There's always been a certain part of the population that, I don't know if it's brains or if it's just a certain different level of consciousness, but who do think for themselves and would much rather be left alone and govern themselves.
But don't you
Because
think
we
that
feel
human
confident
nature
enough to do that.
don't you think that human nature just makes somebody rise to the top though? Like it's just I feel like it's human nature to have like a
An
person or a group of
alpha,
people. Yeah, exactly. That's like somebody that's the leader when shit goes down. Like I've looked at shit like that before. Like I've looked in situations where I'm like, okay, if shit goes down, he's got me, so I can be a little bit, at ease. But there's other times where I'm like, oh, this person I'm with, they don't got me. I gotta be like on high alert and be okay,
yeah,
just in
like
case
we feel
anything pops
now,
off.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is true, but a leader can also just be an organizer.
Mm-hmm.
So a leader doesn't necessarily have to be the authority figure. He can just be a leader, an organizer. But he doesn't have to be the one that the actual laws and rules can be made up by a group of people. The leader can always just be the front man, really just an organizer. Obviously, we know human nature with the ego and all that. That's why you have to make sure that when you put together one of these communities, you got like-minded people and the right type of personalities involved. You're right, because there is that always where a leader, whoever's going to, like, let's say you say, I want to do this with 50 of my friends or 20 of my friends. Well, are you the leader because you organized it? Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Just because you came up with the idea and organize it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the leader.
Mm.
You could be one of the leaders.
Yeah, and then it's like, oof. Yeah, it's tough. Human nature is a tough thing.
Yeah,
I think it. I don't know. It's hard to give everybody an equal voice only because some people are just very dumb. Like if everybody had an equal, like if there was a commune of 60 people, there's got to be some dumb people in there. you
sure
know?
there are. Sure there's dumb people, but they don't, they won't maybe even want to participate. They'll be happy with,
True.
okay, my job in the community is to clean up the streets. And in exchange for cleaning up the streets, the doctor takes care of all my medical needs. The farmer gives me food because, you know what I mean? Because my
Mm.
job is to clean up the streets. Do I care? Do I need to necessarily be in a position where decisions are made? No.
Mm.
The real role of government is supposed to be administrative. Basically, they're supposed to make sure the roads are good. They're supposed to make sure the country is running with the right, has money to run.
Right.
They're supposed to handle infrastructure. They're supposed to, handle administrative things. They're not supposed to tell you how to think. They really are not. That is
I
not their
agree.
job. The government's job, even though the word itself, and this is what people need to know, comes from govern and mente. And governmente means to control the mind. It's a
Mm.
Latin word. Mente is mind. So it's right in the word. But that's not on paper what they're supposed to be doing. It's nowhere in the Constitution. As a matter of fact, we have freedom of speech in the Constitution. It's nowhere in our Constitution that says the government is supposed to tell you what to think. You know what I mean? The government, it's not there.
It doesn't exist. Sorry, guys.
It doesn't exist, but yet
they're
they
not
think
supposed to do your thinking.
it's not in there. But that's what they think is their role now. You know, because if their role was just the administrative part, they'd be fired. If they were a regular CEO and we were the board of directors, they'd be fired. They'd be fired right now. But the reality is this is a corporation. The United States is a corporation and the president is the CEO. This country was incorporated in 1887. We are the United States of America Incorporated.
Yep.
This is This is a corporation. And if he's the CEO, then we're the board of directors. And we're the stockholders, right? We should be fired because the job of administration, meaning keeping money, handling
running
the finances
smoothly.
and all that, they're doing a horrible job. Infrastructure, they're doing a horrible job. The borders, they're doing a horrible job. They should be fired at the thing that but controlling your mind, controlling what you think, well, that's what they're focusing on. You know what I mean? That's more important of them, that they need to create a special office called the Ministry of Truth, whatever they're calling it, to censor your speech. But yet the country's broke. Yeah. And people in the country are poor and starving. This is a first world country. I mean, we're supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world. They're not doing their job properly because they're not focused on the proper things. They're just not doing it properly. We're broke. Our country is broke. So if they're the ones in charge of handling the finances, and this is not just Biden, this is all the administrations. We have been running on a freaking. When George Bush II took office, we were in the red. Do you know that? We were running at we weren't running at a deficit at the time. And that's why he gave away all that free money. Remember, he gave away free $300 to every American citizen because we had a surplus of money. And what happened right after he did that? 9/11. Killed the economy, collapsed everything. And then we're back. And then after that came 2008, right? Now we're back into freaking debt, printing money. You know, the 90s was a big boom for this country. With the internet, it was pretty war-free. You know, it was a big boom for the country, and we had money when George Bush took office. And then now we're back to like the worst deficit we've ever had. This would be like if you took out 50 credit cards and maxed them all out and then kept asking for more credit.
Yep. Yeah, they're going to eventually tell you to fuck off.
Right. And this is what the other countries are starting to do. And God forbid China calls in its loans, and says, now you got to repay the money. We're calling in all our bonds.
And they're like, wait, what? You want your money?
Yeah. You're no longer a profitable investment for us. We're going to lose our space as the number one financially. Definitely. And those, this country loses its status as the world's reserve currency. You're going to see inflation.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to see problems. People
like we've never seen before.
Yeah, people are not prepared for that. But it's definitely a possibility. And brings us back to the whole digital world, Digital crypto was a pushback to the financial system, to the corrupt financial system. And it was something that I don't know if the people created it, but it was created basically so that people could exchange money between themselves without a middleman.
Yep.
Now you see they're trying to regulate it. Now they're trying to tax the crap out of it. I don't know if you've seen the tax laws around crypto, and you see how it's affected the market, right?
Yep.
The crypto market today is crap, right now. It's on a big downturn, and it hasn't really made any large jumps in a while like it did, like it used to. Bitcoin is sitting at around the 40s.
It was up in the 70s
earlier last year.
Yep.
And that's because people are afraid now because it's getting overregulated. And I see the NFT market has now started to crash.
Yeah, the NFT market is more because of the gas fees, because they're charging exorbitant amounts of ETH for the gas transactions to happen to buy the NFT. And so much so that like Bored Apes just released a metaverse land in a new coin, a crypto coin, and they made gas prices be like thousands of dollars to buy something for $300.
Right. It's not
And
worth
some
it.
people are just like, oh, I need to pay it because it kind of is worth it. Like crypto, like for instance, Bored Ape Yacht Club, I could have bought them for basically 0.1 Ethereum last year. Would have been like $400, right? With all the gas fees, it's 0.06 for the mint, all that shit. If I would have bought that, that would be worth 150 ETH right now.
Wow. Okay.
And if it just was a slight hesitation on my part for
not knowing, right? It's new.
I was like an ape. What the fuck is an ape? Seems stupid.
It seems like the NFT market is dominated by apes.
Oh, I didn't see the video game. I didn't see that video game coming out where you play to get NFTs and trade them. That seems fucking fire.
That's a whole nother subject, is the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're living halfway there. Like we live so much on social media. A lot of people do.
Well,
Majority
it has
of the
created
people.
another universe, another virtual matrix, so to speak, on top of the matrix we're already in. You're right.
Yeah.
But the metaverse will create another level of that. We're actually immersed in it. And if you watch the movie Ready Player One, you kind of see where that's headed.
Yep. And Black Mirror and all those. There's so much predictive shit that they put out.
It's predictive shit. These people know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a question of, okay, so the people who do not want to participate in this new world, this new society, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create our own systems, our own alternative systems? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's something we all ought to start thinking about. Is there other alternative communication systems we can use?
You gotta send that to me on Facebook, Matt. Spigucci, sorry.
Oh, there it is. There's your link. Now you can find that game.
Huh. Yeah, NFTs are interesting because if done the right way, it's like ownership back to the people, but here's hoping it can stay non-corrupt if it's not already. But I'm going to a big NFT convention in like less than 2 weeks now. It's fucking crazy.
Where is it?
In Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wish it was in Puerto Rico. That would have been way better.
Well, they're going to start. You'll see Puerto Rico has adopted blockchain.
Oh, yeah, of course, because capital gains are like free there.
Yeah. So it's adopted blockchain. They're going to start using it actually within the government. Not necessarily coins with blockchain technology to execute contracts and things like that. I'm sure Brock Pierce has quite a bunch of holdings down here in Puerto Rico. Logan Paul, bunch of crypto billionaires have moved down here, and I'm sure they've gotten into the ear of the government. So you're going to see Puerto Rico, especially as more and more of the U.S. collapses, trying to set up their own systems like this. So Puerto Rico, especially with the tax laws they have, will be a hub for crypto. And
Yeah,
you will
because
see a convention down here, and you'll see me there.
yeah, maybe next year VCon, the Gary V thing that I'm going to, is going to be in fucking Puerto Rico. That would be fire.
Yeah, I mean, and they already are holding like small little meetings. They
Yeah,
do have like a group that gets together.
this one has 10,000 people just going to the convention. Never mind the people that are just coming to hang out. So probably 20 to 40,000 people that are coming to an area. It's
Yeah, and they just had one in Miami, I think, right? Big crypto.
yep, NFT Miami.
Yeah.
They did it in New York City, and they've done it all over now. Like, but this is going to be the biggest one so far.
Well, we got to bring them down here.
Snoop and Pharrell and fucking a bunch of other artists are performing there and shit. It's
the metaverse is a whole nother topic,
dude. The metaverse is insane. I've performed in the metaverse.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you have to put the goggles on?
No.
To perform? No, you just performed and they're wearing the goggles, right?
No, I mean the way they're doing it is they're trying to make it they're not ready for the AR goggles yet, but they're making it immersive where you can like click on it and everything and make a character and the character can dance, and so you're basically like in a room watching somebody perform on a screen. Yeah, so it's like the beginning of the metaverse, it's kind of like the cell phone when we had to plug in channels to make a phone call.
You're in the audience, but you're in the audience as an avatar.
Basically, yeah. Okay. In the metaverse.
Right. Okay. Well, imagine when they start putting on the glasses.
Yeah. It's going to be the real life Matrix.
It is. It is. It really, that's where we're headed. The Matrix had a lot of truth in it. A lot of truth in it. But a lot of people didn't see that. All they saw was the action and the fight scenes and the great special effects.
It's always hidden within the context of it. You got to read between the lines.
Yeah, exactly. The new one was kind of crap, but
was it?
Oh, you didn't see it?
No, I don't really watch much of anything.
No, I only watch what I think is going to be important.
Yeah.
Since The Matrix was such an important trilogy,
I gotta rewatch that.
So much truth in it. I had to watch the new one, and it was more of a satire. Like you could tell he made it begrudgingly, and he put a lot of inside jokes in there against Warner Brothers and things like that, and it was it definitely wasn't as good. We could just put it that way. Like anything, they try to reboot after 20 years.
Yeah. They can't just ever let anything die and come up with something new. They're just like, oh, we gotta. Yeah. What's the new idea? We gotta reboot this. We gotta reboot it. I've never
seen it in my life. Like, I think in my lifetime, I've seen more versions of Spider-Man. Different actors, different trilogies. How many Spider-Man?
It always works. It always works.
How much Spider-Man do you need?
Apparently infinite.
Infinite Spider-Man.
Because it's always a major blockbuster release. It's like, what the fuck? How do they have 10 different actors playing Spider-Man? It just doesn't even matter.
Right? It doesn't even matter. I've never seen. I mean, obviously I'm old, and I've been watching movies for a long time, and I never seen it like this, where they're just pounding this shit out, and it's people are eating it up.
Mm-hmm.
People are eating it.
Yeah, they are.
And it's not that good. I watched the last Spider-Man movie. I was like, it was just too much.
Yeah, that's what they do. They put like way too much action into it.
They just pack too much into it. And I'm not a fan of his rendition of Spider-Man anyway. No, he's too much of a kid. But anyway, that's just my take on it. Peter Parker was a reporter, in the comics and in the original series. He was a reporter. Right. He was not a high school kid. Like that. He was a reporter. He was a photographer. He was out writing stories and stuff. He wasn't, but whatever. Anyway,
Yeah. That's hilarious. But yeah, holy shit. I haven't looked up at the timer in a
I
long
know.
time. And
I
it's
just
been
did.
2
We've been on
hours.
for 2 hours, so maybe we
That's
ought to wrap
fucking
this up. But it's been a great talk. We did talk about hemp and cannabis, and that's what we wanted to talk about. We talked about a
Yep.
few other things too.
Yeah.
But
Hey, gotta let the people know for sure. It was
I
definitely a
don't,
lot of fun.
yeah, it definitely was, and I'd love to do it again anytime you want.
Hell yeah.
We can get more in depth if you want, but then we might get in trouble. But
Catch a ban.
I think we kept it pretty good tonight.
Yeah,
Uh,
kept it PG-13.
yeah, we kept it good, and we didn't go too deep, but we did get to vent what we think and what
So
we're
for
seeing. What
people
we're
that are
seeing.
gonna watch this and listen to this later, where can they find you at?
They can find me at Greenhaven Media on Facebook or Joe the Weed Guy on Instagram, Facebook, Greenhaven Media or Joe the Weed Guy. And then on Mondays at 1:00, we do Cannabis Corner Radio. That's also on Facebook. You can find that on Facebook Live, or if you're in the New Haven area, you can actually listen to it over the airwaves on 103.5 FM. And that's Mondays at 1. We talk about everything cannabis on that show. We've had you on as a guest a few times, and we'll have you on again as well. And it was a pleasure being here. I would hope to hear from some of your listeners.
Hell yeah, absolutely. And as always, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good vibes to you. Have a great day.